Welcome back to the LDA podcast. I'm Lindsay Dyer, and this is where we bring you real conversations with the people who are doing interesting things across the aviation industry. Here at LDA, we do provide scheduling, dispatch, and operational support for flight departments. We help them run more efficiently so they can focus on what matters most. Today, we get a chance to talk about something that doesn't really get enough attention in our industry, I feel. And that is what actually happens when a medical emergency occurs in the air and whether your crew is truly ready for that. I am joined today by Rick Adams. He's the co-founder of Skali Inc. and he's an active Boeing 737 captain at United Airlines. So Rick has had an impressive aviation career. He's flown the Airbus 319 and 320, the Boeing 757 and 67. He also served in the U.S. Air Force, so thank you for that, and the Air National Guard as a KC-135 pilot. And he's logged lots of years of international flying as well, all across the globe. Skali was founded by Rick alongside Hussein Attarwala, a technology entrepreneur and aviation industry veteran, and Dr. Vitaly Poilin, a gastrointestinal surgeon who brings the medical expertise that sits at the core of everything Skali does. Three very different backgrounds, aviation, technology, and medicine, all coming together to solve one very important problem. So together they built Skali, a platform that gives crews 24/7 global access to emergency medicine specialists, AI-driven triage, pre-flight screening, and crew care support, all at a price point that actually makes sense for operators of all sizes. And yes, it connects you to a physician in 90 seconds. I think I've had pizza delivered slower than that. Way slower than that. Rick is also living proof that pilots are apparently not busy enough between flying around the world and serving their country because Rick has decided to co-found this startup on top of all of the rest of what he does. So Rick, we really respect that hustle.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about the product, the technology, what it really looks like when a medical emergency happens in the air, and what it took to build a company from the ground up in one of the most complex industries in the world. Rick, welcome to the podcast. I'm really glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Okay, so we're going to kind of start off by talking about your career. You've had a very long career in all sorts of different sections there, commercial flying, military flying. Can you just give our listeners a quick picture of what your background is and maybe how you got to this point?
Certainly. Just real briefly, I grew up always being attracted to aviation. I had a grandfather who was a pilot in the Navy in World War II, so I always admired him. Kind
Cool.
of wanted to follow in his footsteps one day. So I went to university at the Air Force Academy, which led me right into Air Force flying.
Okay.
I flew 12 years on active duty in the KC-135, doing air
Wow.
refueling. And then after having a few children and wanting to settle down a bit for my family, I
Mm-hmm.
joined the Air National Guard based out of Milwaukee and simultaneously got hired at United Airlines based out of Chicago. So we
Nice.
moved to the Midwest and we're raising our kids here in the Chicago area.
Nice.
I've loved aviation. It's been my entire adult life, and I did just retired from the National Guard last year after 21 years of total service, and
Wow.
now I have a little more time to devote towards Scali.
That sounds great. Well, I
Thanks.
see it's just been growing, so that's wonderful. Where did the medical kind of piece come into it? Like, how did you figure
Yeah.
out that this type of a program was important?
Well, actually, my entire family is in medicine except for me. I was the black
Oh,
sheep that went into aviation. I had a father who was a physician and a mother was a nurse. All my siblings are in medicine, so it's always been tangentially interesting to me.
okay.
But it was really when I met Hussein and Vitali in business school. So during COVID, I was faced with a potential furlough, and I decided that I wanted to have other opportunities besides flying.
Right.
And so I went to Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern, just down the road from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And it was there that I met Hussein and Vitali. One day Hussein called me. They were in a separate cohort, and he said, "Hey, I understand you're a pilot. I have this interesting idea for a company. I can tell you the genesis of his idea if you would like, but basically, he told me about coming up with an app and a service to help flight crews handle medical emergencies. And I had literally just had in a medical emergency on one of my flights when I was on the Airbus, and we had to divert, and it was very chaotic. And I just said, this couldn't come at a better time. There's an absolute need for this in the industry. The service I used was adequate, but not ideal. I think we
Sure.
could do something better. He said, "Well, hey, listen, we've got the doctor piece. You're the aviation guy. I'm the healthcare IT guy. What do you say we do this?" And so it was born in business school. But then
Cool.
we quickly saw some interest, and a lot of people validated our idea, especially our initial investors. That
Mhm.
really gave us a lot of wind in our sails to get this thing going. So we've been building Skali to help flight crews and flight departments deal with this very real problem in the world.
That is so cool. So there are definitely programs out here that do this, but you guys are leveraging technology, which we'll talk about a little bit later on as well, but you guys are really leveraging that technology to make it even better.
Yeah, it's the 21st century, and a lot of the solutions that exist are still in the 20th century.
Yeah.
So like I said, they're adequate, but they're
Mhm.
not ideal. And we just saw a real opportunity to leverage modern existing technology,
Mhm.
namely satellite Wi-Fi, improved ground-based Wi-Fi, the fact that Wi-Fi is becoming ubiquitous across aircraft, especially increasingly year over year. More fleets are adding it, more aircraft are adding it.
Yep.
And we have these beautiful devices in our pockets and in our EFBs that just do magic. And we realized that there was an opportunity there to improve on this solution.
Very cool. Okay, so what is the difference between like, or what have you learned by helping found a company versus flying? I mean, you've had a very long career in flying, but this is pretty different.
It is certainly different. One, I would say, it seems actually not uncommon for pilots to find some sort of side hustle. I don't know why, but it's very popular for a lot of folks I fly with to be active in something else other than flying. For me, it just really scratched an itch there where, when I was out of the cockpit, I wanted to keep my mind busy and doing something productive.
Hmm.
But flying is very procedural based, very
Yeah.
checklist based, which I love. I thrive on that. And entrepreneurship is not. You're building the checklist as you go. And especially for someone with my background, this is all very new. So you really have to take a bite of humble pie every day and just accept being the student, learning on the job. But thankfully, I've got an amazing team. My partners are brilliant, and so we have different skills. And so when I feel subpar at something, I can rely on them and count on them to make up for my weaknesses and vice versa. So it's been really fun to learn how to work as a team on something that's completely new and challenging.
That is really a great piece of having a team. The three of you guys can, be your best at what you are the best, and then leave the other pieces to the other pieces of the team, the other part of the team. That's very cool.
Thanks.
Okay, so I want to kind of get all of our listeners to understand how important and how real this actually is. I mean, sometimes if we're just flying commercially as a passenger, we might see on the news every once in a while where a medical emergency, they had to land for something. But it's probably a lot more scary and a lot more real if you are flying the airplane or you're maybe the passenger sitting next to them. Um, or if you're in business aviation, we're talking about, these are probably your loved ones or your coworkers that could be very dear to you. So can we just talk about what is it actually happens on a medical emergency?
Sure. So just to start, you mentioned how common this actually is. when we began this endeavor, we did some research into, how real this problem was. I think the idea came to Hussein when he was watching a documentary, I believe it was called Cities in the Sky.
Okay.
At any time around the globe, there are enough people in the air at one time to basically constitute a major city. I mean,
Mm.
there are thousands and thousands and thousands of humans in the air, nowhere near a hospital, and you need some sort of healthcare, at least consultation.
Mm-hmm.
So, in one of our studies, we found, I think, a 2018 JAMA article that cited or estimated almost 1 in 600 flights experiences an emergency. They
Wow.
actually updated that last year, 2025 article that they estimate now 1 in 199 flights experiences some sort of medical event. Now, that's not necessarily an emergency or requires a diversion, but some sort of medical concern.
Mm-hmm.
That's significant. When you
Yeah.
spread that across every flight, every day around the world, that is, significant numbers of people needing medical advice.
Yep.
And and you mentioned, the way it feels for a crew member. We're not medically trained. I mentioned I have family members who are, but I'm not, and my flight attendants are not, and fellow passengers are usually not. I mean, you'll always hear that people get on the PA and say, "Is there a doctor on board?" And
Right.
sometimes there is, if you're lucky. A lot of
Yep.
times there's not. And so even something very minor can be somewhat concerning, without a doctor there to ask, and then sometimes when it's serious, I mean, it's very concerning. It's a very significant emergency, really, for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
And as a pilot, I can tell you that, stress goes up. It's a significant distraction, and distractions in the flight deck can be managed, but they're not welcome. They're not ideal. And so
Right.
if you can minimize that distraction, it really enhances flight safety. So in my experience, if a flight attendant calls me, through the secure cockpit door on the interplane and says, hey, we have a medical emergency, I'm immediately now transferring all flying, radios, pilot monitoring, pilot flying, whatever, to the first officer. And now
Mm-hmm.
I am the communication node. I am the middleman, the go-between in this game of telephone between the flight attendant and eventually a physician. But
Sure.
it often goes through several steps. And so, in my experience with the current service that we use at my airline, I'm calling my dispatcher and then I'm saying, hey, I need you to patch me through, radio to phone, get me to this service. Then
Yep.
I wait a couple of minutes and then I get to a triage nurse and then they ask me a few questions. In the meantime, I'm calling back and asking a few questions and they're asking somebody else a few questions. And it's this game of telephone.
Yeah.
And it takes several minutes before I'm actually talking to a physician. And even then, they don't know what they don't know. They can only infer based on the limited information that I'm giving them. And then they're making a recommendation. And so it is a little frustrating. And so at Skali, we're trying to shorten that communication chain, both in time and in just the number of people, so that you can get direct communication directly to a physician within seconds, and you can bypass that chain. You keep everybody informed. Everybody still gets real-time information and updates, but they don't have to be involved. So I can
Okay.
focus safely on flying the airplane.
Right.
Flight
Yep.
attendants feel much more peace of mind having that immediate consultation and that immediate access to a
Mm-hmm.
physician. And we don't have to go to a triage nurse because our app already gathers all the information directly for the physician so that by the time they take the call, they already have everything they need. The passengers feel peace of mind, obviously, because they're being cared for or getting advice much sooner. So
Yep.
it's it's a better way to proceed, I believe.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, just cutting out more of the middle people, like if you can cut out that dispatcher and possibly the pilot in there
Well,
and
let me just interrupt real quick.
Mhm.
We want to make this easier for the dispatcher as well. They'll still get real-time updates on their computer
Okay.
screen, and they'll see that a physician has been contacted and that the doctor is dealing with these symptoms and giving the right advice, but they don't now have to be the middleman either. they can
Uh-huh.
now just go ahead about, understanding that the situation is being taken care of
Okay.
medically, but that they can sort of get ahead of the ball and start looking at possible diversions or replanning the flight plan. The schedulers can start, planning in advance for any schedule disruptions. So
Uh-huh.
this keeps everybody involved and up to date and informed, but it just makes their job less stressful.
Great. Okay, so I know we were going to talk about the technology in a little bit, but why don't we jump into the technology because that just sounds super interesting to me. How
Sure.
does that all work?
So we are an app, but it's an app-based service. So we have a team of emergency physicians backed by Vituity. It's one of the nation's largest emergency physician-led acute care networks in the country.
Okay.
They were one of our initial investors, and they provide all of our back-end expert medical care. But the
Great.
app itself is installed on an electronic flight bag for crews.
Okay.
It's not installed on the aircraft. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't require any FAA certification. You just give it to your crew members. We provide them on training on how to do that, either in person or asynchronously. We'll provide flight medical kits that are FAA approved. And then you can just immediately, with a single sign on, just one click and initiate a medical event at any time during that flight or before and reach one of our physicians. Now, if Wi-Fi goes down, that's a frequent question.
Yeah.
Then we have a contract with Air Inc.
Mm.
To just get a phone patch. It's sort of the status quo, the old-fashioned way, and we'll
Yeah.
call one of our doctors. But we'll still be gathering all the symptoms, all the data, all the biometrics digitally, so that when the signal is revived, everybody has what they need.
Very cool. Okay, you mentioned the medical kit. I'm kind of curious about that one. What does that include? And is this like a large bag? Is this a small bag?
Well, we offer the standard sort of medical kit that comes on most flights with, kind of the FAA sort of minimum requirements. But then
Okay.
we'll add whatever the customer would like, whether it's Narcan or EpiPens or what have you, or wearable devices. One of the beautiful things about Skali is that we're thinking ahead. We've already built it so that you can Bluetooth in wearable devices, whether it's a glucometer, a thermometer, a pulse oximeter, an EKG, so that the physician basically is getting real-time data as if you're sitting in the clinic with them.
Mhm. Wow, that is so cool. All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah, I've never heard of that piece of it.
Well, it's using the existing technology that's out there, right? And say you can't Bluetooth in for whatever reason, then we just have a camera, you take a screenshot and then upload that on the app. But
Okay.
yeah, either way, you're not, it just improves the accuracy as well.
Hmm.
If a flight attendant is reading a blood pressure or something off of a machine, like a turbulent ride, and then calling me and I'm writing it down, there's a risk that I transcribe something wrong or that ultimately the doctor doesn't even get the correct information or in a timely way. So this improves accuracy.
I love it. Okay, so now tell me a little bit about how you're utilizing some of the AI pieces of it.
Sure. So we have a little AI bot we call Ash, and it right now is used primarily to triage. Like I said, we don't need the triage nurse. The Ash basically gathers all of the symptoms and the biometric data in the right way, sort of the protocol that would be expected in an emergency room, so that the
Okay.
physician gets everything presented in the correct format and in the right order and in the right way. And
Okay.
it gives the flight crews a starting point. Like we said, we're checklist driven, so it gives them, step A, step B, step C. So that's how we're using AI right now. And it also gathers a lot of data, which is really cool, so that we can sort of predict and analyze past occurrences and predict what happens in the future, with the rate of occurrences and the types of emergencies that people are seeing.
Sure.
Um, and going forward, I'm excited about this as a pilot flying that we're going to use AI to help recommend best diversion airfields. So this would really help the dispatchers and the pilots determine based on the type of aircraft, the runway length, the weather, and even the nearest treatment facility, like tier one treatment facility that might be within driving distance. And it will quickly analyze that and then provide a few preferred options for
Hmm.
diversions.
I love that piece of it. I know on the business side, we every once in a while we'll get a phone call. Hey, we need to know what is the nearest hospital, and Googling it up and doing drive time based on the different airports around there is not efficient. It's not
Right.
easy. So,
Right. And this is one of those scenarios where AI can just speed things up. And
mhm.
we just really time is critical in a lot of emergencies or even just simple
Yeah,
medical scenarios even. And so shortening that time really helps everybody involved.
totally. Okay, so I kind of want to talk about the time a little bit. So you kind of start out with the AI triage piece of it. We can get in contact with a physician within 90 seconds. But
Right.
what if you don't necessarily need a physician? Do you get one right away every time? Or
Yes, so we're set up to you call, you hit the initiate call button and it'll gather whatever data you want. It'll go to one of our physicians and they'll say, "Hey, how can I help?"
got it. Okay. And then they can say, yeah, they can help make that decision if this really is life threatening. We need to find a spot to land, or if we can mitigate it on board.
Right. And ideally you would. And interestingly, in that 2018 JAMA article, they estimated that several diversions could be avoided if there was only better information. And that was actually the key piece in determining whether we even wanted to pursue this job anyway was is there a real problem and is there a room for improvement? And the answer was unequivocally yes. Like there are many unnecessary diversions, and so from an operator's standpoint, this cuts down quite a bit on costly diversions. Not only are you mitigating distractions for the flight crew, you're improving peace of mind and improving medical care for actual medical incidents, but you're
Mhm.
also reducing unnecessary costs as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that really does because I mean it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to make a diversion land somebody at somewhere else, and then if something isn't really that bad and you have to just take off. Not even to mention I could say the emotional side of that. I think that probably is scary to everybody, or it's certainly not pleasant. Um, and depending on who your passengers are, you certainly don't want to scare them. On my side, obviously,
No,
uh, could be charter, so you could have somebody who's not commonly flying on an aircraft like that.
right.
Um, you want them to come back and be a client again, but you certainly don't want to scare them.
Right. And I've had medical diversions personally where it was absolutely the right call and paramedics met us at the gate and they needed to be there. But I've
Hmm.
also had some patients miraculously walk themselves right off the flight and they were A-OK. And now we're fueling again and taking back off. And at my airline, it can cost anywhere from 300,000 to $800,000 depending on the aircraft and the diversion location and how many people are involved and all the downstream effects. But even for a smaller single plane owner operator, like you said, that's still thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars in
Hmm.
unnecessary costs. And the emotional toll and all of that. It's just if you can avoid a single unnecessary diversion based on better information, why not?
Agree, wholeheartedly agree. Okay, you had mentioned there's a couple of different areas that Skali covers. And you said pre-flight screening. The in-flight emergencies is what we've been really talking about now. But what about the pre-flight screening? And you also offer crew care. Can you talk to me a little bit about what those are?
Sure. And I don't want to get too I want to be careful to make sure that crew care is not like, doctors on call for crew members. This is more in flight as well. So it's
Okay,
passenger and crews who need it pre-flight or in flight or,
got it.
throughout the duration of the flight. But we're not going to be a separate crew on-call telemedicine platform.
Got it.
Um, yeah, but yeah, we also do screenings because many times a passenger or a crew member might be feeling ill before they even you know get on the aircraft or take, take off. And so we could call then, and it works just the same. You speak to the doctor and say, should we even go? Is it safe to go? When my wife was pregnant, I remember even in her second trimester, she wasn't feeling well, and I know she'd been approved to fly, but then she started feeling ill, and she's like, I think I should call and ask my doctor if it's safe, or if I
Sure.
should get on the flight or something like that. We would handle cases like that, or if there was some other symptoms that arose, you could call and at least get some peace of mind or get some advice from a physician on whether it's even safe to go. Or
Yeah.
the flight crew could say, "Hey, we have this passenger. They don't look that great. Could we maybe have the doctor look at him or take a look at him and see if we could because I'm not trained to make that assessment as the pilot,
Right.
but if it's an important client and they want to get somewhere, maybe now I could know if it's a good idea or not, whether we should take off.
Right. Right. Because I mean, catching it before you take off is going to be a whole lot better than having an emergency in the air.
Certainly.
Yep. Okay, so you talked about the idea that Hussein had, and then he came to you, and the process of taking that idea and turning it into a real company. What was maybe your first couple of steps? I mean, I know you talked about making sure it was a valid idea, but what other things did you have to do?
Boy, it's been so many years in the making. It's been the result of a million little steps. But
Sure.
I mean, the initial big ones are finding the right team and really exploring, doing your research first, making sure that you have a problem to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially when you're in business school and you're all excited and fired up and you've got all these ideas and everybody wants to innovate and create and change the world. You've got, a lot of great ideas, but if there's no problem to solve, then is the solution really marketable or not? And so really it took a lot of just diligent research and talking to people in the industry and thankfully I had personal experience, so I was able to cut through some of that.
Sure.
But understanding who your customers are going to be and what the real pain points are is a good first step. And then it's just the incorporation and the name and the logo and kind of all the fun stuff. And then it's a matter of really getting your idea out there to potential investors, because it's really hard to get a company off the ground without at least some capital.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we were able to attract a little bit of interest early on, just based on our idea and the way we presented it.
Well, you have two very high stakes, highly regulated industries that you're working with, both aviation and medical. Uh, Lots of rules, lots of people, but also very highly visible, I would say, too. I mean, a lot of people in both of those industries there. So, you guys were building this during COVID because you said you went to business school when COVID was around, there's possible furloughs and stuff. I'm assuming that some of that shaped the way the company was built and what it was going to offer.
It did. I think probably to our benefit, actually, as people were getting on planes and really cognizant of medical issues and wearing masks and all of that, there was a lot more awareness of potential medical incidents on flights. And so this issue has, it's always been there. And there's always been, or at least in the last several decades, there's been some services that provide solutions, but this has become more significant in the public consciousness, and so that awareness of medical events on flights has helped a little bit as we communicate the problem we're trying to solve. We were still in the nascent phases of building the company kind of during the pandemic.
Okay.
So thankfully, it didn't really set us back. If anything, it just gave us a little bit of breathing room to continue to build and set the foundation. We've been very intentional about building this. We want to do it the right way with the right bedrock, the right foundation from the beginning. So
Yep.
one of our early advisors, Chris DeRossi, former Mac OS architect from Apple, has been instrumental in helping us build the correct tech stack. Doing it everything sort of future-proof to help us be able to grow and scale when the time comes,
Yep.
so that that everything works correctly the first time. But it does mean that you're going a little bit slower than some competitors or the market may go. But to
Okay.
do it correctly, we want to take our time and really get off on the right footing.
Yep. One thing that seems relevant to me is you were starting in COVID and then you have that pre-screening option, you can check in with a doctor prior to departure.
Right.
I feel like perhaps before COVID, that might have been a little bit more difficult to do. I know at least some of the operators that I worked with during COVID, they were doing their own pre-screening type of thing as passengers got in. People might have been filling out forms to say how they feel. They may have been doing temperature checks beforehand.
Hmm.
And that seems to have gotten more people mm, accepting of the idea that you may need how am I trying to say that? Just that somebody's going to look at you and they may say, hey, you're not looking so great before you get on the airplane. And that would be a valid observation and a valid
Right.
time to stop somebody.
And like you said, you're not looking so great. So when I'm speaking to a physician on the radio, they have no idea how this person looks.
Sure.
There's a lot of diagnosis that involves nonverbal communication and seeing somebody's affect, seeing somebody's color,
Mm-hmm.
seeing their posture, all of that. And so with Skali, we actually you can do a video call, face to face, FaceTime call, if you will,
Yep.
from 30,000 feet, and the doctor can see the passenger and get so much more information out of that and
Mm-hmm.
make a better call there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a very important piece that differentiates us, and that's one thing I'm very excited about.
Huge.
Also, I'd like to mention that we're HIPAA certified, and we're the first of this type of solution to be HIPAA certified, and that
Really?
was a non-negotiable for us as we built it, that
Okay.
everything is encrypted and secure. I've actually been off the East Coast and been listening on HF radio to another airline broadcast not only somebody's age and symptoms, and then they gave their name, and
Oh.
it was just like all privacy was out the window.
Yep.
And that may not matter, 9 times out of 10, but if you're one of these business charters, or you have like a high profile client or somebody who values privacy very much,
Right.
that matters a whole lot. And really, it should matter for everybody. I mean, when you're talking about medical information, you want to limit it to, need to know a small group of people. So with Scali, we provide that for everybody.
That's wonderful. A huge differentiator on the market then.
Right.
That's so. Can we talk about Dr. Poylan a little bit? Because we've talked about
Yeah.
Hussein and his idea and kind of how you guys met, but how did he come into the picture? I mean, obviously he has a lot of the medical background.
Yeah. So Vitali is an absolute brilliant guy. I mean, one of the smartest I've ever met. He's a gastrointestinal surgeon, and he's head of global medicine at Northwestern University hospital system in Chicago. And he was in the same cohort, sitting in class with Hussein at Kellogg, when
Wow.
Hussein said, "Hey, I've got this idea." And Hussein had this perfect background of having been a pharmacist by education, and then he went into healthcare IT and built electronic medical records for hospitals. So he's like, I can do this like tech piece. And Dr. Poylan's like, well, I can help with the medical piece, like make sure all the protocols are correct, and all the medical questions are asked in the right way, and the
Mhm.
medical kits are all, sourced properly and whatnot. And so the two of them were just such an attractive team to join anyway. But Vitali is he's our chief medical officer. He's the one who handles all things medical. When we have a question and say, "Hey, how does this normally work? What information do you need? How should this app, function for the physician to make the diagnosis or the prognosis and ultimately the recommendation on what to do for the flight crews.
Sounds great. What a perfect timing. Like, I really believe that sometimes in life it's just meant to be, and it kind of sounds like the three of you guys being in that class together was really meant to be.
I think so. I feel very fortunate to have met both those guys and just to have the opportunity to work on this. You know, will it be a big game changer? I hope so. I think it can. You
Yeah,
never know as a small business, as a startup, but
right.
the potential is there, and there's a lot of enthusiasm, and I'm just very grateful for both of them to be partners with, and it's been a real fun ride so far.
That's awesome. Okay, so you did point out a couple of things I think is very important. Not all great ideas come to fruition and end up being a gigantic company.
Right.
But for someone maybe who's listening that might have an idea that they want to build in aviation or healthcare or any situations, actually, what is one of the most important things that they need to understand before they start or in the very beginning?
Well, that's a good question. I would say, well, aviation and healthcare are both very difficult industries to break
Yeah.
into. So, it took maybe a lot of confidence. Pilots don't lack confidence, and neither do surgeons. But, I think it really did take a little bit of, confidence in ourselves and in the team and in the idea. Like I said, we really researched the problem
Mhm.
and what we could offer before we made the jump. It is a risk. I mean, spending your time and your money and your resources. Hussein works on this full time. He literally quit his day job to build
Wow.
Skali, and he has been just crushing it. It takes a special kind of person to be willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a calculated risk. You can't just jump in blindly or with just pure optimism and nothing else. You have to do the research, understand the market, understand your skill set and how you can use that to solve a problem. It has to have some sort of logic and reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
It can't just be optimism. You always have to understand that failure is an option. It happens a lot. It's very common. You got to go in with a never quit attitude at the same time, and thick
Yeah.
skin. I have had to really, over the years, get used to hearing the word no.
Sure.
Even after fifth round interviews where you think, oh, we've got this investment in the bag, or this client or this customer, you think, oh, I've almost made it. This is going to be a big win, and then
Yep.
no, not this time. I mean, you get used to rejection very quickly, and it happens often, and it happens almost always. And so you just have to have thick skin and not take it personally, and also not let it steer you off the path. You have to
Yeah.
really keep reminding yourself there's a need for this, there's a problem that we're solving, and if we just keep at it and find the right yes, then doors will open.
The
So
right yes. That's a really good way to put it. Yep. And I think your company too is a good example of the fact that things don't happen overnight. I mean, nobody is going to have these multi-million gigantic companies overnight like it seems like they're doing. I mean, I talk about this quite often actually because many people look at companies and they're an overnight success. But
yeah.
it's never an overnight success. This is people putting in their hard earned time, money, effort into it for years. And that's how they make it successful.
Well, the stories that are sexy and that sell are the overnight success. It's the unicorns, it's the Silicon Valley companies that are instantly valued, 100x and 1000x, And so that does make news because it is newsworthy. But in reality, most creators and entrepreneurs struggle, and it is a long-term process, and it is grueling, but it's still worth doing, just because it's
Yeah.
hard doesn't, if it was honestly, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And it almost wouldn't be worth doing. But we're very excited to take on a challenge, and I I think we've got a better than zero shot at success. I always remind Hussein, it's we've got to, when you have something you believe in and there's enough tailwinds, you really can succeed. You just have to stay the course.
I love it. Okay, and this is just probably some short questions, but I want to talk a little bit about pricing. And I'm not asking, definitely not asking for pricing on our show, but I want to talk about the fact that you probably can accommodate larger airlines. But for my listeners, oftentimes they're the one-off, maybe one owner-operator aircraft
Right.
department. And if I'm not, if I think I'm correct in saying that you guys can tailor your pricing towards some of those smaller flight departments.
Right. And the beauty of our technology and our service is that our overhead is actually very low, and we can accommodate a wide range of customers. And so, even if it's just a single one-off event, talk to us, and we can help solve that problem for you if you need us.
So you're talking about like maybe an international trip, like maybe one of my people has to go on a long international trip all the way through Asia. That would be something that you could perhaps accommodate.
Certainly. I mean, with our service, we can accommodate global calls pretty much anywhere in the world. And our service doesn't isn't limited just to aviation. It goes
Okay.
to, yachts, maritime vessels,
Sure.
oil and gas rigs, almost any remote situation. But
Mm-hmm.
we focused on aviation because that really is what we understand the most, and that's how we built the app for, for the customer. But
Okay.
yeah, I guess my point is that it really is truly global and flexible.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about yachts. You could do helicopters that are remote. Yeah, interesting. One of your partners is World Fuel Services. What does that mean? Like, what do you guys partner with them with?
Well, so as a smaller company, one of our challenges is just getting our name out there. And World Fuel Services is one of the leaders in the industry with many impactful partnerships. And
Yep.
they have really been fans of ours and been incredibly supportive. And they help promote us and introduce us to many of their connections. And then we, in turn, can support all their many customers and World Fuel Services themselves. So
Nice.
it's a very healthy partnership. It's very beneficial, and they have just been absolutely wonderful sponsors, if you will, of Skali.
Nice.
And it helps significantly in aviation. I mentioned earlier it's a very difficult industry. Credibility matters a lot,
Yep.
and so that takes time. And so when you have an endorsement from an industry leader, that
Mm-hmm.
helps tremendously.
It sure does. Yeah, World Fuel is well recognized, large company, especially now that they took over the Universal
Mhm.
Trip Services part. I can only imagine how helpful you guys are to them. Yeah, and all their clients as well. Okay, so let's think about a scheduler or dispatcher perhaps that's listening right now. What is maybe one of the one things that you'd like them to walk away from with this conversation?
Sure. Well, we haven't forgotten you in our development, and we've met with schedulers and dispatchers and listened to their pain points when it comes to medical events.
Mm-hmm.
And Scali is designed to seamlessly integrate with your current workflows. It's not going to replace anything. It's just going to make things easier and quicker.
Okay.
So you will still have eyes on, you will still be involved, you will still have the information you need, but with fewer distractions and in less time, you'll be able to make a decision and support the flight crews, and you'll have more peace of mind just as they will. So it's only meant to help, and it's designed to really make things more seamless and easier.
I love easier. I mean, and more of us are being asked to do more and more during our days, and so easier is always better.
Right.
All right, Rick, I have just some real quick questions, fast ones for you here.
Sure.
What is the most common in-flight medical emergency that crews are the least prepared for?
I would say it's something like fainting, where it could be benign and totally insignificant, or it could be something very severe. And so the uncertainty there is very nerve-wracking. And when somebody loses consciousness, it can be very stressful for the flight crews.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would be very stressful. I agree. Okay, how about one thing every scheduler should have in their emergency protocol that most of them don't have?
Hmm.
Or dispatchers,
Uh,
dispatcher.
I would have a plan in place and practice it, like some sort of protocol for a medical emergency. Ask yourself, what if this happens, and who do I call? Have a contact list handy. Have some sort of checklist ready to go, because in the moment it's stressful. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have already pre-rehearsed what you're going to do or who you're going to call, it may not be a perfect solution, but at least it gets you started and it removes a lot of stress.
Yep, love it. Yeah, practice is always good. How do you explain Skali's value to a CFO who says it's not in the budget?
Well, we talked about the cost a little bit earlier.
You did.
One unnecessary diversion makes up for the entire subscription. So the cost of being prepared, I'll say, is much less than the cost of a diversion. So um, it's an investment. How significant depends on your budget, but I would say that Scali is priced to be very competitive. So I would recommend you take a look, because it could actually save you significant amounts of money going forward.
Yeah, I use that reference of the firefighters, and I know it's a kind of a publicly paid thing, but you want them to be there when you need them, and
Right.
you're not going to use them any other time. But if you don't have them and you lose everything,
And let me just add, as financially, it helps your sales team and your marketing team, because you can now offer this as a service that for your business customers. So
yep.
it's a selling point to say, hey, we offer the latest and greatest in healthcare communications, so that if you or your loved ones have a medical event on one of our flights, we can
Mhm.
connect you to a physician. So
Mhm.
it might help sales as well.
Yeah, very true. Last quick one is what's the best piece of advice that you've received when building the company?
Boy, I would say, lean on your team. It's okay to say, I don't know. I'm going to ask one of my teammates, and use each other, use your team. You can't do everything alone, and don't try to, work together. And if somebody on your team doesn't even know the answer, find someone who does and bring them in on your team. But keep expanding until you get an answer, and then you can find out what you want to do, or how you can help somebody.
Love it. Yeah. Teams always make things better. It's just a larger knowledge base there. So,
Right. So somebody out there knows the answer, right? So just keep asking until you
right?
find it.
Keep digging for them. It's very true. Somebody knows. Well, Rick, thank you so much for joining us today. Wow.
It's been a pleasure. This flew by. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for the great questions.
Yeah.
It's fun to look back in retrospect, and kind of see. It's not often that we reflect on what we're actively pursuing. So this is a great opportunity.
Good. Yeah, and I think you mentioned before, when you that partnership with World Fuel, and a lot of it comes down to just getting people to know that you're out there. I know LDA has a similar issue that people just don't know we're available, and I'm sure that that happens in many products, but there are a few, at least on the business aviation side, a few companies that are kind of the tried and true, and everybody uses the same ones all the time.
Hmm.
Um, and they don't necessarily know that like a Skali exists. So I love being able to highlight new companies like yours.
Well, thank you. We're tremendously grateful, really. It's just so nice of you to give us some exposure and to show an interest in us and to help amplify what we're trying to get out there. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. I can't wait until we can partner with some of our clients as well, because I really think they're going to love it. So,
I agree.
Rick, thank you again for joining us. I just wanted to mention, between the military, the airlines, and now co-founding a company with a tech entrepreneur and a surgeon, hats off to you and all of the effort that you put into the Skali company and your flying along with it. And for everyone listening, if you want to learn more about Skali or get in touch with the team, head to scalillc.com or reach out directly at info@scalillc.com. We'll have all their account information and contact information in the show notes right below, so you can check them out there. And here is my ask. If you got something out of today's episode, please take a second to like, subscribe, and share it with somebody in your world. A colleague, maybe a fellow scheduler, a pilot, a dispatcher, whether it's business aviation or commercial, because both sides of the aisle could use this. These conversations really help grow our industry and make our industry more knowledgeable. So I genuinely appreciate every single share. We've got more great episodes coming up on the LDA podcast, and we're really glad that you are here for the ride. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.